Hello! So a viewer asked a very good question about, well, he said that you shouldn't be using the soft nylon fuel line, you should be using hard nylon fuel line. Now, I've only ever used the soft stuff, like on the bench test, where you're only using, a little length of it. So I've no idea what the difference is at long lengths, like even the, right, you can't see up there, but the all-in-one diesel heater, even though it's only got a short length of fuel line, it comes with hard nylon fuel line off the fuel pump and in the heater. Like I say, it's only like maybe 50 centimetres worth of fuel line. So what I have purchased is 4.4 metres of the soft nylon fuel line, and I've cut 4.4 metres of the hard nylon fuel line. So that'll give us like the worst possible case scenario you can have of running a big long length of soft squishy fuel pipe versus, well, hard fuel pipe. We will plumb it from the diesel tank. We will plumb it from the fuel pump and the fuel tank, and then just run a length of coil on the bench and back up into the heater. And we will measure the burn chamber temperature on the probe that's stabbed all the way inside the burn chamber temperature on the meter, and we will see if the soft or the hard makes any difference to the burn chamber temperature at all. So yeah, let's do that and find out. Okay, for the first test I've gone for the nylon fuel line, and I can tell you that was a pain in the arse to bleed 4.4 metres of fuel line and get the air out of it, but I got practically all of it. There's very small air bubbles, but I think that's from the pump cavitating. See a very small air bubbles. Don't mind the smoke, that's just spilled diesel, etc. So on the thermocouples, the top number, that is the innermost burn chamber temperature, which is just over 1,000 degrees. And the bottom one is a thermocouple that I've tried to stab into the housing, sort of. Can you see the blue silicon and the green wire? It's not an housing temperature such, it's not touching the housing so much, it's just kind of general ambient around that area kind of reading. It's just to give us a before and after of each thing. So we're running 1,000 degrees inside. It'll start to go up and down now as it throttles back on fuel. And shall we check the afterburner to see what the housing temperature says? I'll put the camera back down. So there it is, it's running. Let me fish out the afterburner app. So the afterburner says we have a body temperature of 169 degrees at the moment, 169. So 170 just went to there. Let us now turn this all off and swap the pipe out for the other fuel pipe, and we'll do the same test and see if the numbers are anywhere near the same. That is the flexible fuel line, all plumbed in and bled, and yeah, it was as much fun as the first time. So while this is starting up, I thought we would talk about the whys people prefer or think they prefer the solid pipe over the flexible stuff. So people keep saying, oh, it's the pulse. You need the pulse, to atomize the fuel. Well, no, the pulse does not atomize the fuel. The atomizer mesh in the burn chamber atomizes the fuel. The pulse, or rather, therefore, the pressure helps to keep pushing the fuel in, because obviously you've got a resistive force of the burning gas trying to push backwards, so you need another force to push the fuel in, both of which pipes this will supply. So, and to illustrate this point, if it's not the pulse, because Webasto make these pulse dampeners. These take the pulse out of the fuel line. In here, as we've seen in the previous video, is a big rubber diaphragm that's allowed to move. So for each pulse of fuel, the diaphragm moves and then opposes it, so you get a steadier stream of fuel, still at pressure though, out of the outlet. Thus, taking the pulse out of the pulse, but still retaining the pressure. So as long as both lines are able to contain a pressure and provide it to the diesel heater, they will run, and they will probably run the same. Why should you use this hose? Because it's much better quality hose. Wait, this even says on it, right? 300 PSI strength. You know, you could use it for an airline. And well, it's good minus 40 to 120 degrees. So you can get this like near your exhaust without it melting. The other stuff, God, if you even look at that with like heat or warmth, it just melts. It goes soft. And so another reason it goes soft. So even up to 120 degrees, this will still be relatively rigid. Which you're working with diesel heaters, you're near heat, temperature, fuel, you know, you want it to be nice and safe. So I would still use this nice rigid line. It's a little bit more difficult to work with because it keeps wanting to fucking spring in a million directions, but P-clips, C-clips, clamps, whatever, you can attach that to things and try and get it as straight as possible, but it always wants to spring back in. Again, temperature resistance and just general strength of things banging into it or getting bumped or knocked or stabbed or stood on versus the soft squishy stuff that you can literally just pinch it to stop it and block it off. But the heater's firing up in the background. Let us take a look at the numbers while it's starting up. Wait a minute, I'll see if I can zoom in for you. Can we see the probs from here? Can we? Towards. Zoom in. So here it is in starting up. I like there's usually a moment in the overlap where the glow plug goes off, but the fuel hasn't quite got over the point, and you'll sometimes see it drops down and then the fuel relights and it comes back up. This doesn't seem to have happened this time. It's gone straight up and past and over into the full burning. So I shall let that run for a few minutes, until it's up to over 1,000 degrees, and then I'll bring you back. Well, we are way up over 130 degrees now. 130 degrees, 1,030 degrees. There we go, it should have peaked and is now starting to drop again. It'll hover there. I'm not surprised that it's a higher temperature now, given that it's now later on, so everything's warmer. Ambient air is warmer, the outside air temperature is warmer, so therefore combustion is going to be warmer, and so on and so forth. Everything's just warmer. Had it been cooler, I'd have been more worried, because if it was cooler, that means that it's not burning properly. But as you can see, it's at 112 on the body-ish temperature and 1,030 on the inner core. The afterburner says we've got a body temperature of 174 degrees at the moment. It's still climbing because it's still warming, but it's getting warmer, so therefore the body temperature will keep going up until it plateaus. So yeah, I can't see anything wrong with the flexible fuel line, other than the previous stated that the solid stuff's just a better quality, more resistant to abrasion, impacts and temperature. A good enough reason to use it, but claiming that it doesn't make the heater run as well, that seems to not be a thing, because there's 4.4 meters of it and it's burning away quite happily with more or less the same temperatures it had running on the solid stuff. Let me just turn this off. Heater going off. I'll come back once it's slowed down and turned off. So to reiterate, the soft flexible fuel line runs the heater just as well as the hard stuff. If it was to do with pulse, then the pulse dampener would not exist. That would not be a thing. Pressure, yes, pressure enough to push fuel into the inlet. The main benefit of using this stuff is temperature resistance and abrasion resistance, etc. For example, temperature resistance, I was taking this off the heater on this end, which is the fuel inlet end, next to my exhaust. On that bit, I literally just pulled gently and the fuel pipe came off. I mean, like, applied minimal pressure, fuel pipe dropped off. And that is with, I've got, well, heat wrap on my exhaust to protect that bit from temperature. So even the mild temperatures of the cool down cycle of that getting warm is enough to soften it. Conversely, On the other end, where I was on the fuel pump, that I had to fight it to pull that off because it was obviously still stone cold from being on the cold diesel and the cold pump. So I had to fight that like a little fucker to get that to come off of that end. Unlike the other end, like I say, it just went boop and just fell off. That does not happen with this rubber pipe. That's probably FKM, but you know, it's temperature and fuel resistant, and it's really quite strong stuff. Hence, because you want it next to your exhaust port, you know, your exhaust here. Because that gets hot, that gets real hot. If you've not got exhaust wrap on that, I mean, there's only like 3/4 of an inch gap between your fuel inlet pipe and your roasting hot exhaust coming out. Hence, they use the rigid nylon with its relatively high temperature resistance, rather than the soft, squishy, easily to melt and easily to burst flexible stuff. So I hope that answers some of your questions and some of your comments. So it's not to do with the pulse or anything like that on running the heater, because the heaters run just fine on either. Hell, fuck, you can run them on the horrible silicon pipe if you're dumb enough and it's short enough. The only reason you can't run it on silicon pipe is the silicon is not fuel rated and it turns to jelly when you put fuel in it, and you can just snap it with your hands and squash it and crumble it and it dissolves. It's quite horrible. But the other stuff, this totally works if you're doing a little short run and, you know, for example, like we're testing the workshop, it doesn't matter if we're just doing a, hell, even on the all-in-one heater, just going from there to there, I could probably have got away with just using the flexible stuff. But it comes from the factory with hard nylon and the FKM bits, so that's what we'll continue using. Any comments, questions, anything else, please leave me a message down below. I can't get my hand out the camera, and I'll do my best to answer them, or, you know, stuff basically. But hopefully that sheds some more light on the fuel lines. And yeah, I would just use the stuff that comes in the kit. I mean, there's a reason they send you that in the kit. It's because it's actually not a bad quality of fuel line. Thanks for watching, guys.